Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with a video to discuss the exciting news that the Vampire Coast is going to be released in just a little over a month for Total War Warhammer 2. So, pretty unexpected announcement to be quite fair, for me at any rate. And there's a whole bunch of DLC content. Well, there's going to be a whole bunch of content with that, and there's going to be a whole bunch of free DLC content coming out alongside it, a bunch of changes to campaigns. And I kind of wanted to cover what little we've got right now, to cover what little we know right now, and perhaps break down and speculate a little bit as well. So right off the bat, we are going to watch the trailer really quick. If you guys don't care for the trailer, you can skip on ahead about 3 minutes, and I'll be going through all the news right there, but I did first want to run through the trailer here, and it's pretty good stuff, so let's watch.
You wouldn't believe us. The tales we could tell. Though, truth be told, it started very poorly. I was one, but now we are many. We all agree on one thing: to sail the coast, hunt down those lizard trinkets, and we will find them. Peace at a time. We will put ourselves back together. Fortune favors the infamous.
So that was a bit of craziness, and yeah, it looks really good. We got to see a whole bunch of things that in the trailer that perhaps give us a little bit of an idea of some of the units. Obviously, we got to see the whole bunch, some of the units just displayed on display here. Everything from the deck droppers to the sirens, which seem to be a full unit rather than being heroes by the look of it, but just by judging by how many of them there are. All sorts of monstrous crabs and creatures. I would assume is the merworm in the back there, and there's just so much content. So we are going to be jumping on over to first the news for from CA proper, and then on to the Steam page, because I do believe the Steam page has some more information, and from the Steam page we should be able to speculate a little more as to what units might be coming and what some of the additional content we might be getting is. So without further ado, let's hop right on over to there. So if we go on to the page for CA, it's kind of cursory, and there isn't really much detail right now, to be quite frank. So we will kind of gloss through it real quick. Steam basically has most of this information as well, but there are a few little differences here that I did want to run over. Right now, there's not much information, so a lot of it is going to be speculative or kind of guessing, but definitely some cool things. sort of being released here. Quite frankly, I was not expecting Vampire Coast. I do believe I said so in one of my speculative videos that I figured these guys were probably one of the least likely factions to make it out of those that were on the Warhammer 2 map. And I've obviously been proven wrong. I'm quite frankly happy I was proven wrong, because I think that opens up the possibility of further very rare or limited information factions being released in the future, which I think is pretty cool. But quickly going over what we got. Apparently there's going to be 4 legendary lords. This is something I am really surprised by, and this is one of the reasons I really didn't think this would be happening with the Vampire Coast. The Vampire Coast, as far as I am aware, Luther Harkon is honestly the only vampire lord the only lord I can think of for these guys. So I really don't know who they came up with for the other 3 legendary lords. I'm hoping that it's going to be something fun and exciting and different. If we look down here at the bottom, it does look like CA has gone really into a lot of depth looking for into other sources. They've gone into Dreadfleet and different novels, and they've gone into the Monsters Arcanum, which they've gone into before. That's where a lot of the units from Norska come from. And it includes apparently reading old Warhammer sources and White Dwarf articles, which is pretty awesome. I think it shows that CA is willing to kind of go a bit of an extra mile, I guess, to make factions that don't have fully fleshed out rosters happen. And I do like the fact that they are going back to some older research or older information to make this stuff happen. And I assume that is probably where many of these legendary lords are going to be coming from. Now, otherwise, we do have we are going to be getting a new lore of magic on top of these 4 new legendary lords. That is the lore of the deep. This is, as far as I'm aware, not a lore from the tabletop. It's not it's something that CA completely made up from scratch. I have no idea what it could be. If I had to speculate, I'd guess it's going to be some weird mix between vampire magic and perhaps lore of wild. I would assume a good chunk of summons, or at least one summoned ability, I would assume. Perhaps something to do with water or that sort of stuff. Perhaps something similar to Bordello's Trident as far as abilities or spells go. I don't know, to be honest. It's completely original as far as I'm aware, so there's not much to know. Now, obviously, a new roster, and this is, as we discussed, they've gone to, as far as I can tell, pretty great lengths to make this roster happen, to put it all together. Now, there was a zombie pirate roster, and we can see it here, and this gives us a bit of an idea of what we might expect. Now, interestingly enough, the Sirens here are listed as a hero. As far as the trailer showed, it doesn't look like they're a hero there. There was so many of them that it looks more like they're an entire unit. They're which I might be wrong. Maybe they just had like dozen Sirens and they're all individual units, but it didn't look that way. Which would be interesting. That could be that might be a unit change. Now, Vampire Fleet Captain, probably akin to a White King, I would assume, though I could be wrong. Now, core units. Now, this is one of the interesting things about this faction is that it's a very zombie-heavy faction. There aren't any skeletons. They don't have any heavy cav. They don't really have vampiric units besides the captains or besides Luther Harkon. Actually, I'm not even sure if any. I don't even think the other ones here are actually not vampiric. So it's definitely going to be a mix of sort of reanimated monstrosities, as well as just a bunch of zombies. I'm not entirely sure, and I will go into a little more depth on the units in a little bit. But I'm not entirely sure how they're going to execute this. If they're going to be making some differences between the zombie pirates and normal zombies as far as their general stats and their general capabilities go, their mobility and that sort of stuff goes. There's a lot of units here, though, that we will be discussing once we get to the Steam side of things, because they've got a little more depth there and a little more stuff I would like to discuss. But there's obviously a lot of new units that are coming out, some from Forge World, such as, go away, but some from Forge World, like Murngull, some from old sources, like Necrofex Colossus, which is those crazy ship titans that look awesome with their cannons and their flamethrowers and whatnot. And so, obviously, going to all sorts of source material there. Now, otherwise, a whole bunch of new campaign mechanics. These are explained much better on Steam, so I will be going there. Now, interesting new battle mechanics, and this is something I did want to touch upon a little bit. More powder and extra powder, and I do believe there's already an ability called extra powder for engineers, and for the Dwarf Engineer and the Skaven Warlock Engineer. And currently, these buffs don't really do all that much. They're kind of trash. especially extra powder, because I think the only thing it does is improve like explosive damage, so it only really affects like catapults who don't even use gunpowder. It's kind of really weird, but regardless, I do like the idea of new mechanics to help keep your gun lines topped up with ammo, to help top units off with ammo. I think it might give some ideas for other factions as well, for factions that are heavy on shooting. This might be some changes or improvements that might be implemented. It does look like there's going to be a whole bunch of different abilities here and different unique campaign mechanics as well, which is pretty slick. The release date set to November 8th. Not much to say there. I will be leaving links to the Steam page as well as the trailer down below if you guys want to check those out on your own time. I've already pre-ordered. Definitely very hyped for the game's release. Now, yeah, we don't know much about the Legendary Lords as we discussed. It's not a Vortex campaign. Once again, they've got their own unique goals, which we'll be discussing in a little bit. Like I said, there's a lot of this stuff is on Steam, and that's why I'm going here first, because there's less here, and I just kind of want to gloss over some things that aren't going to be mentioned later. There is, however, going to be free DLC, and this is something that if there's one thing that actually disappointed me with this, it's this. Well, it's this portion really, the free DLC. Obviously, we're going to be getting Vampire Coast, which is great. But the free DLC, apparently there's going to be, well, there's going to be island battles. This is actually not something I'm disappointed with. Rather than sea battles, or being auto-resolved, now you're going to have the option of fighting it out on an island. If it's a Black Ark, you're going to have a Black Ark battle, which is awesome. I'm really happy about that. I'm really glad they're getting rid of auto-resolve. And honestly, this might also make a huge difference. For some of the abilities that were previously worthless, like for example, I think Bordalo has like plus 60, beating Bordalo gives you like plus 16 melee attack on naval battles, which used to be useless. Now I could see it becoming much more viable, much more useful. But the one disappointment here is the fact that it's vampire counts that are getting a rework. I know that CA already said it's going to be a faction we didn't expect, but vampire counts are not a faction right now that needs a rework badly. I understand why they're doing it. I understand it's just to coincide with Vampire Coast. It coincides with Halloween and all that, season of spookiness and all that sort of stuff. But quite frankly, greenskins are in a huge need of a proper rework. Beastmen are in an even bigger need of they are in dire need of a rework. And Empire is definitely more needy as far as reworks go. And they choose Vampire Counts, who are quite literally probably the second most well-off faction of the base 5 you get with Warhammer. With Warhammer 1. Dwarves already got their rework. Bretonnia already got their rework. But otherwise, vampires are solid. They're rather well off. They're already a pretty good faction as is, and they don't really have issues. If you wanted to change anything, give them an extra lord with Red Duke. But I don't think that right now they're in such a desperate need. So I was honestly a little disappointed by this. I just don't think it's. I'm happy that they're getting a change. Obviously, any content is good, but as far as priorities go, I'm not too thrilled about. This is the one thing I'm not too happy about. Then. Finally, there will be a free LC Lord. I'm really hoping this is Gorok for the Lizards, or honestly any Lizardman Lord. Personally, I'm not the biggest Lizardman player, but the fact that Lizardmen have just been shafted and haven't gotten any new content for over a year at this point has been really disheartening, and I really, really hope it's a Lizardman Legendary Lord. Dark Elves can wait. Malice can wait, though. Unfortunately, I feel like it might be Malice. You never know, or perhaps it could even be. It could even be the pirate lord for the Dark Elves, which would be not. I forget what his name is. Just that's slipping my head on top of my head, but not slipping my mind. But regardless, that might be what we'll be seeing, and I'm personally hoping it's a Lizardman, though. But regardless, going on to Steam, which has a lot more information, a lot of pretty pictures here. So if we can look at the pictures, there's some pretty cool stuff that we can glean here. And you can see there's Scurvy Dogs, so probably, which are probably going to be a bit of a knockoff of the Dire Wolves that we've already got. We can see the Necrofex Colossus in the background, which looks a little different than the picture. The picture here seems to be completely melee-oriented. It's basically just a giant ship walker with a fist and blades. But this seems to be a shooting walker, and it seems like the unit they chose for their combat single end model monster is the giant crabs. We also do see the Queen Bess, who is going to be a unique summon, and for the Vampire Coast, and it's listed down below, which is pretty cool. So, wow. Going further, you can see there's the infested or infected ogres. They've actually got their they're the animated hulks, I suppose. Now, one of the interesting things, and one of the things I'm not entirely sure about, as far as these guys are concerned, is they do have these cannons built into their arms. So I'm not entirely sure if that means they are going to be able to shoot, or if it's just for show and they're just going to swing their cannon barrels around and like smack people over the head with them. But it does look like these guys all have cannons in their arms, which makes me think they might be able to shoot, at least in some capacity. The Necrovex Colossus as well, there seemed to be two variations in the trailer. One was using a flamethrower, one was using cannons. Now, I'm not entirely sure if these are two separate variants, if one of them is the Regiment of Renown variant, because obviously there's going to be 8 Regiments of Renown being released alongside this faction. So I'm not sure if it's the Regiment of Renown. I'm not sure if it's some sort of mount or some sort of hero option. I don't know what it might be or why it might be that way. But it does look like there might be two variations, at the very least, of the Necrovex Colossus, which I'm pretty hyped for. It looks awesome. It's a pretty crazy, disgusting piece of work, but definitely looks pretty awesome with those cannons. And another monster, another shooting monster, I think is pretty good. Just getting more variety of units is always a nice thing. The giant crabs, and there seems to be two variations of them. One that's like an Arachnarok-sized one, and then one that's a little smaller, like these guys. And they seem to have artillery pieces on their back. You can actually see the zombies protruding, and the cannons over there sticking out of their shell. So it's pretty cool to see that we're going to get some further artillery units and get some more heavily armored monsters. I would assume these guys are probably going to be at least comparable to Shopti in survivability, if not more so. And they do seem to have some black powder weaponry in there, which is pretty crazy. Obviously, the pirates, the zombie pirates, who make up the sort of majority of the crew. Interestingly enough, back here, there seems to be another ogre, except this guy has normal hands. So I'm not entirely sure what that means, why that is the case. We can also see the deck droppers, who are giant bats carrying zombie pirates. I would assume they might work like pterodons, where they just drop off a unit once, and otherwise they're basically just giant bats, sort of like a melee flyer unit. One thing I'm not sure about the zombie pirates is that if they behave like normal zombies, even if they don't necessarily have quite the same stats, is that they're going to be very slow. I'm not sure if it does mention on the wiki that they've got a little more control or a little spark of life left, or whatever, spark of personality. So I'm interested to see if they're going to be a little more mobile, perhaps, a little more agile than normal zombies, even if not perhaps on par with, say, normal human troops, even if they have like 25, 26, 27 speed. Currently, zombies, I think, sit at 23, which is really horribly slow. It makes Graveguard look fast, and that's unfortunate. Otherwise, we can see more deck droppers. We can see more of those disgusting crabs, and a lot more of those ogres. So all in all, pretty cool stuff. You can see here they're about to smush some elves by the look of it. And it does look, once again, we see those sirens here in the corner, and it does look like they are going to be their a unit. Now, there might also be a separate unit of them, as well as a what might happen is they could also be a unit as well as a hero version, and I'm not entirely sure if that will be the case. Finally, we do see some additional artillery pieces. We see some cannons. We see cannons up here in the front. We see some mortars here in the back, and that's definitely cool. Black powder, undead faction, always a lot of fun. Definitely pretty psyched for that. Some campaign images, not much to say there. And then, once again, we have the giant crab, but more importantly, it does show us a few of the model counts, and this gives us a little bit of an idea of what we can expect here. This is on ultra size, probably, and it's a safe bet. But we can get some interesting info. First of all, well, we see Luther Harkon, who obviously has a pistol and a blade. I would assume he might play out a little bit like a witch hunter on steroids, is honestly what I would assume out of him. We do see some, what looks to be, these guys look almost like Vikings, but you can see here they're marching around. They've got halberds. There is actually a unit listed in the roster somewhere that's, I think, called the Deep Guard or Depth Guard or whatever. But this is probably what it is. It's interesting that it's an elite unit that seems to be comparable to not chosen Aspiring Champions, and they seem to have halberds. So an anti-large elite unit definitely seems pretty awesome. I don't think this faction should have too many issues with anti-large. Even though we haven't seen any anti-large units, it does seem like most of their infantry is crap and chaff. Between all of their monstrosities, I don't see any glaring weaknesses currently in their roster. Usually, if a faction has black powder, it is reasonably competitive. Especially when you've got monsters to sort of stop enemies from just rampaging through your back line, which these guys do have. So we'll obviously see, and it's still all speculative, but I do think these guys should be, as far as quick match and competitive play goes, I think these guys should be reasonably well off. Obviously, that remains to be seen. Now, interestingly enough, the handguns or the zombie pirates or whatever they are seem to be coming in units of 120 in a normal size or in large size. Here it's on 160, obviously, which is huge for a black powder unit. I'm not sure if they are going to be doing full black powder damage, if they're going to be like Free Company who doesn't even have AP, or what that entails, but if it's 120 units if it's 120 handgunners, even gimped handgunners, that is going to be ludicrous. So I would assume that they're going to be weaker. But that definitely remains to be seen, and it definitely looks pretty cool. Then there's these guys like the calibers, or I don't know, carronades or whatever they are, deck guns maybe, who seem to be comparable to Skaven weapon teams with 24 models on normal settings. Yeah, pretty cool. I would assume they're going to be sort of like a troll hammer. Maybe not dedicated anti-large, but just a heavy black powder unit that is somewhat mobile. We do have the crabs with their artillery pieces as well over here, who seem to be coming in units of 12 on ultra, so 9 on large. Cannons, of course. Well, cannons are cannons, not much to say there. And then the giant crab, who does seem to have some ammunition, but that might be more like the Arachnarok, who's got ammo, because there's like 3 goblins on the top shooting bows. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that aspect of it, but definitely looks pretty awesome. So, having all that ranting and raving aside, we can dive through here and quickly clear through whatever other information Steam has for us. So first of all, the objective for their campaign. It does appear, and we can see here, the Vampiric Depth Guard, which I think is what we saw up there. But if we quickly look over here, we can see that it seems the objective is to get the Star Metal Harpoon, which is a weapon powerful enough to bring the greatest merworm of them all to heal. And the merworm is a disgusting beastie that looks really, really ugly. If we look it up here on the wonderful Warhammer Fantasy Wiki, we can see it in all its foul glory. It is, I do believe, a Forge World model, and I do believe that is what we saw in the background there in the trailer towards the end, just rising through in the depths. It's bigger, I think, in there than it is on here, so perhaps it's but it's supposed to be a giant merworm, so that might be why. Wrong thing. Going through otherwise though, this faction will be a bit of a hybrid horde and normal faction, where you've got the ships which function like a horde, where they let you build buildings and all that sort of stuff, but you can still settle normal settlements and function like a normal faction, as far as I'm aware. I don't believe there's no Norska shenanigans where you can only control coastal towns, as far as has been described. Regiments of Renown, of course, unique tech. There's going to be different legendary lords, which is pretty cool. The new lore, of course, magic roster. We've already kind of gone over. A lot of cool units coming out. Units from Forge World, like the Morngul. Units from former lore, like Necrofex. One of the interesting things about the way they did the Morngul originally, when I saw the pictures, I kind of assumed that the way the Morngul works is that it's actually a flying unit, that it kind of like hovers in the air, and it's like a nasty ghoul. And it seems to be huge in comparison to what we see here. So it seems like they scaled it down a bit as well in the game, which I don't know, might be good, might be bad. A little sad that it's not a complete huge monster. You can see it's comparable, actually. It's bigger than a Crypt Horror by the look of it, but regardless, still very cool. And it also crawls along instead of flying, which I always kind of assumed it floats in the air, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't know what the exact lore there is supposed to be. As we can see, once again, the new campaign mechanics seems that it's actually comparable to the ritual system. It's not going to be something crazy like the way the Tomb Kings are, because it says that they have to get, somewhere here it lists it. There's 3 different sea shanties you have to go, and there's going to be opposing pirate captains trying to prevent you. That honestly sounds a lot like the ritual system now. Perhaps it's going to be quest battles, in which case it would definitely be different. But yeah, it does sound a lot like the ritual system at the moment, just not directly bound to the vortex, so there's no race involved. Finally, of course, there is apparently going to be a huge merworm. So and it would seem that the last battle is going to be against this Aminar, this huge merworm, to try to get it under your control, which seems pretty cool. As far as other things go, Infamy seems to be comparable to, which seems to be their unique mechanic, seems to be comparable to Bretonia's Chivalry, where it is the way to the ultimate victory in the Vampire Coast campaign. Bretonia's ultimate victory is 2,000, or I do believe in Mortal Empires currently, it's 2,000 Chivalry. So this would, and then of course doing your quest battle. So this actually seems pretty comparable to that, though perhaps having some different benefit. Well, obviously having different benefits, probably some different exact correlation, and it might encourage different things than what Bretonia does. In Bretonia's case, the way Chivalry works, it discourages a lot of things, including ambushes, sacking, raising, all that sort of stuff. Or not raising, but sacking and looting and all that sort of stuff. An interesting new mechanic, Pirate Coves. So we're going to be able to add a secret sub-settlement that can steal income from the main settlement, and this can only be destroyed if the settlement is destroyed, or probably if the Vampire Coast faction is destroyed as well. I don't know if this... it does seem to only affect ports, so you don't have to worry about ground settlements or inland settlements suffering like this, which is pretty good. Nonetheless, I think that's pretty cool, being able to siphon gold off from your opponents. Pretty fun. As we mentioned, the ships are going to be making a showing as a bit of a horde mechanic. Pieces of 8, so the regiments of renown seem to be bound to finding certain golden tokens, which is pretty cool. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what these regiments of renown look like, but I have no real speculation there, because I just don't... Even the roster itself is a bit limited as far as what we know about, so definitely looking forward to seeing more from CA about that in the future. Treasure maps. Currently, the way treasure works, the ground treasure from scouting ruins is trash. The sea treasure is a lot of fun and almost always useful and worthwhile. So, I don't know. Treasure maps, if they work somehow, like some of those... It kind of depends on how this works out. This could be great. It could be very worthwhile. It could also be garbage that's not worth it. Currently, unfortunately, there's a lot of these quest things are just not worth doing. It's true for essentially for Norsegods hunts. It's true for, and it's unfortunate, but honestly, I'd say it's pretty darn true. It's just not worth it doing Norscan hunts for most part. It's not worth it to search ruins for treasure. A lot of these things are just not worthwhile. So I'm hoping that this is made somehow incentivized enough to be worth it. Unique rights. Well, you get unique rights. The Queen Bess, which is that huge cannon we saw there, the one that's just blasting sky high, and that one seems to be right item, which means it's probably not going to be available in quick match. It probably means it's going to be pretty limited, even in customs or in campaign. Which, nonetheless, it does seem pretty cool. And then the Curse of the Sea Mist is another right they list. They didn't list all 4, but the Curse of the Sea Mist, which seems to be a attrition and Vanguard deployment combo. So comparable to those. There's already quite a few comparable rights to that in the game as we have it right now. One of the things I'm not entirely sure about is if the Curse of the Queen's Cannon is going to last forever, or if it's just a temporary thing, maybe like the Green Knight, for example, or if it's going to be like a permanent addition, like a lot of the Norscan regiments of renown, like you unlock it. I feel like if it's only a one-off, that's a little odd, because while it might be a great unit, only getting one of them, like having a right that you can only use once, would be a little strange. But we'll see. Perhaps it lets you redeploy it or something if you recast the right. I'm not entirely sure. As we discussed, those new island battlefields, which is really cool. And otherwise, yeah, we've already kind of covered everything here. So all in all, pretty cool stuff. One of the things I'm really hyped for, about besides the fact that we're getting Vampire Coast, and with all these plethora of new units, and there's so much to speculate about and discuss and prep for, and yeah, excited about, is one of the cool things, or one of the things to consider, I suppose, one of the things to consider, I suppose, is that CA is showing a willingness to go back to old material here. They're showing a willingness to dig around in some obscure corners and use some of their own innovation to flesh out rosters that really were not very big. Vampire Coast, I dismissed it as not going to happen, or almost guaranteed not going to happen, because they only had one Legendary Lord. They've only had like a dozen unique units, maybe, tops. And I'm like, this isn't going to happen. And they only are limited to one spot. But it seems that CA has gone ahead and decided to flesh them out, give them units that didn't exist, give them units from the Monsters Arcanum, look back to the olden days to get weird stuff like Necrofex Colossus, go to Forge World to get the Morngul, all this stuff. So I think that's pretty awesome, and I think it gives me some hope that, one, we might see a lot of the factions that I already kind of assumed might happen, like Kislev, or perhaps even the Dogs of War and Araby. I feel like it's almost more likely now that they're going to happen if they did Vampire Coast. I'm also kind of hoping that this might open up the possibility for other very obscure factions. And honestly, I love Total War Warhammer. It's right now it's basically the only game I play. And maybe not. It's not quite the only game I play, but the main game I play by far. And I don't simply do it for YouTube. And so I obviously just love it. I love the game. I think it's a lot of fun. And any new faction, any new content is great. And the fact that CA might be willing to do more content and more unique content and do their own legwork to get new factions out there is, in my opinion, great. It's a great sign of things to come, and it's something I'm really looking forward to. And really hoping that we might see other weird or niche factions in the future. But regardless, what are your guys' thoughts and opinions? Did you guys enjoy the trailer? I thought the trailer was awesome. What are you guys expecting from Vampire Coast? Do you think they'll be competitive? Do you think they'll be trash? Do you think they're going to be a lot of fun? Are you disappointed? Are you happy? Are you disappointed like me that vampire accounts are getting a rework instead of any of the other factions, or do you think it was warranted? And perhaps it is. Either way, leave me with your thoughts and comments down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I'd love to hear you guys' own thoughts and opinions on this. Like I said, I'm going to leave the links down below for all the Steam page of the trailer, and then of course the Total War FAQ or FAQ, and yeah. That's that. I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below to keep up with additional content of this sort, as well as, of course, the usual quick match fare. If you have any questions or anything else, and obviously your own input, be sure to share. And I do thank you all for watching. Do thank you all for listening to my little rant here, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.